There's no place like home. Hey everybody, and welcome to another episode of Tell Me About Your Damn Book. I'm your host, Stephen Lomer, and my guest this week is John Tuohey. John,
hi.
Welcome. Thank you for being here today.
Thank you for having me.
Now, you have a very fascinating history. You've been around the block once or twice. You're a retired Army lieutenant colonel. Mm-hmm. So when did you sign up? When did you join up with the Army?
In May of 1966.
1966. Okay.
Yeah.
Did you have any tours of duty?
Oh yeah, I did, but never overseas. I went in. It was interesting. The Army sent me a letter, and they said, "We would like to offer you the opportunity to come into the Army as a warrant officer.
Oh.
And if you don't, we're going to draft you as a private. So what do you think?"
I know what I would choose.
I weighed that.
Sure.
And then I said, "Well, I think I'll become a warrant officer." And it was because I was an RN.
Okay.
And I graduated from a 2-year program, and the Army really didn't want 2-year graduates, but they were desperate for nurses.
Okay.
And so McNamara said, "We're going to take in these 2-year graduates," and the chief of the Army Nurse Corps said, "Those people are such inferior creatures. We're not going to make them commissioned officers, we'll make them warrant officers."
Okay,
and
so
I was in
non-coms.
this very small group of people. It was fascinating because warrant officers in general in the Army are highly trained specialists in something.
Mm-hmm.
Most of the helicopter pilots are warrant officers.
Sure.
But a lot of the technical people, who take care of generators and vehicles and aircraft are run by warrant officers. And so people would see my little warrant officer wings and they would think that I was a real hotshot, when in fact I didn't know anything. So I spent my 2 years, and I kept trying to go to Vietnam because I was trying to get away from my wife. And
is that true?
I swear to God. But
wait a minute. Let's rewind here a little bit. So you got married, and it was a mistake.
You know how a lot of people, a lot of guys married their mother?
Yes, I do.
I married my father.
Oh, that's unfortunate.
Because my father and I didn't get along very well.
Wow.
And
how old were you
when I got married?
Yeah,
20.
20. And how old was she?
Just short of 20.
My goodness. Okay.
And we both came from really dysfunctional families with a lot of violence and alcoholism.
Oh, I see.
And I think, in retrospect, that we were attempting to get out of our home circumstances, but we're not mature enough to seek our own independence.
Huh.
So somehow we thought, we'd latch onto each other and that would be additive in some way, when in fact it was not at all.
Wow.
So it was an endless battle for 18 years.
18 years?
18
and the
years.
whole time you were hoping you would get sent to Vietnam?
The whole time, yeah. I kept asking about that. And what I didn't know was they had actually made a stipulation for all of the warrant officers, because we were such incompetents, that we couldn't be sent to Vietnam.
Really?
Is that something? So here we are, everybody's getting sent to Vietnam. We could not be sent to Vietnam.
Wow.
I don't know that until I finished my active duty. I was really surprised, and I thought, well, that explains a lot. So when I got out of active duty in 1968, then they had said to us, you still have another 4-year obligation. You have to go to reserves.
Okay.
And so I did. I also found out later that no one else went. People just didn't show up. And the government never bothered to track people down and do anything about that.
Really?
So I kept going.
You mean the government was incompetent?
Yes.
Wow. This is fascinating. I've never heard this before.
No, I know. Well, you think, here was McNamara who came up with the idea to make us warrant officer nurses. And he also came up with that bomber, which cost something like $750 billion, but never flew.
Right. Yes, I remember that.
So,
yes.
And he also came up with our plan in Vietnam, so he was just a triple threat.
He was an all-around great guy.
Right.
And
he was also the youngest lieutenant colonel in the history of the Air Force.
Is that right?
He was.
I did not know that.
So he was a star once.
Wow. Okay. Now, when did you get into nursing?
Right after I got out of the seminary.
Okay.
That was kind of a strange story, I guess. I was in New York. The seminary was in upstate New York, Franciscan Seminary, Friars of the Atonement. And so I had won a Regents Scholarship, New York State Regents Scholarship. So pretty much I had a scholarship to go to any school in New York for free.
Mm-hmm.
My father said, "You're not going to college." who do you think you are? You're no better than the rest of us. You're going to go to nursing school. To which I said, why would I want, women are nurses, I don't want. He said, well, you're not a real man. You're not a real man. You're never going to be able to do the things a real man does. And nursing is perfect for you. If you don't go to nursing school, then when you leave the seminary in June, you have no place to go because we won't take you home. So I gave it up and went to nursing school, which I really didn't like. I didn't want to be a nurse.
Wow.
Didn't want to be a nurse. But
Your father sounds like a piece of work.
he was a very interesting guy.
Yeah.
He was the reason I
is a
went to the
kind
seminary.
thing. Really?
Oh yeah, to get away from him.
So you at many turns in your life were trying to get away from a lot of people.
Yeah, my mechanism for dealing with conflict is to leave.
Wow.
So, yeah,
So you became a nurse
I did become a nurse.
and you didn't like it.
I didn't like it for a long time. It paid really badly.
Yes.
This is a long time ago. Nursing paid really badly. We had 3 kids at that point.
Mm-hmm.
And so I always had a full-time job, often had a part-time job, and I was in the reserves too.
Mm-hmm.
And so I was always kind of occupied, and unfortunately, and I feel bad saying that my ex-wife, who I actually get along with great now, was in the same boat. I mean, she was stuck with me, I was stuck with her, and we neither one of us knew how to be grown up. So it was really difficult. And then my brother-in-law, who's a nurse, a lot of nurses in my family, said, you ought to look into this thing, nurse practitioners. And there was a program up in Portland that was a federal grant, actually. And so you could go to it for free, but you didn't get a degree, you got a certificate.
Okay.
And so I actually went there in 1975 and became a nurse practitioner in 1977.
Uh-huh.
And I loved being a nurse practitioner.
Really?
I had also thought in the course of all of this, because I kept going to school, because I like going to school,
Mm-hmm.
I was thinking about becoming a clinical psychologist, but by the time I had a master's in psychology and was actually counseling people on a regular basis,
Mm-hmm.
I found myself thinking that if I hear one more people tell me how much this life sucks, I'm going to kill myself. I'll just turn on the oven and put an end to it, because it really is kind of catchy.
Yeah, sure.
You know?
Yeah.
And once I became a nurse practitioner, though, I thought, well, I like this. This is good. It's intellectually challenging. It pays well.
Uh-huh.
It's interesting work.
Uh-huh.
You do a little bit of good in the world, and so that was pretty good.
Nice.
I liked that.
So how long did you do that?
I became a nurse practitioner in '77, and I retired in 2011.
Wow. So
Although
very long time.
then, after I quit working full time in 2011, I did some locum tenens, and that's just where some agency, someplace needs somebody to come in and fill in for 3 months or something like that. So I did a few of those.
Wow.
Some were good, some weren't so good.
Right. But it's all experience.
All
It's
experience.
It's all learning.
Mostly I worked in emergency rooms throughout my life.
Oh, God love you.
So that was kind of interesting and exciting. It really was.
No, I'm sure it was. I have no doubt.
But it's funny, the journals were filled with stuff about burnout, and
Sure.
so I'd read this stuff. I didn't read it too much because I really love what I did,
Mm-hmm.
and I'd say to people, I'm never going to retire. I'll work in an emergency room until I die. And then I went into this period where I couldn't get out of bed for the most part. I just hated going to work. And finally the light goes on. It's like I have really burned out of this. And so I quit the emergency room. In the last few years I actually took some courses, got nationally certified in urology, and worked in a urology clinic for the last 4.5 years that I worked. And that was delightful.
Nice.
Urology is God's work.
I bet it is.
Yeah, if you can get somebody to quit wetting his pants, he thinks you're God.
Amen to that, brother. Amen. Amen to that. We need to step away for a moment. We will be right back with John Tuohey. And we are back with John Tuohey, and we are going to talk about his book, John Tuohey. Tell me about your damn book.
Okay. It was written by myself and two of my friends.
Okay, well,
And,
let's give them the title first, so
the
that
name
they
of-
know what to look for on Amazon.
The name of the book is But Few Are Chosen,
But Few Are Chosen. Okay,
and it's written by Michael Connolly, Richard Olive, and John Tuohey.
okay.
Although we didn't necessarily know this about each other, we all came from very similar backgrounds: Irish Catholic, fair amount of violence, alcoholism, and neighborhoods that were really violent and alcoholic. I mean, that was pretty much the sum and substance of the way that we grew up. And each of us was not headed in a particularly good direction. Personally, I believe had I not gone to the seminary, either my father or I would be dead, and the other one would be in jail. I mean, that's just how it was headed.
Wow.
And my grandmother was the guiding light in my life. She was my father's mother, and she was the only person who had any real power over him. He was the only person I ever saw him act kind of cowed in front of, was his mother. And she balanced the fact that he hated my guts with telling me how much she loved me and how bright she thought I was, and that I needed to get an education and get out of there. And she really drummed that into my head. The only way that people like us ever get out of places like this is through education. I heard that over and over and over. And up until I came along, nobody in my family had ever gotten beyond the second year of high school. So I mean, the education was not a big deal.
Right.
But she really got that bug in my ear. And then how funny things just sort of fall into place from time to time. But when I was in 8th grade, the nuns took us all to a religious fair. And that's really like a farmer's market or something where they're selling religion. So
Okay.
So there's all these tables spread around a gym, and some are from Catholic high schools trying to get you to go there, and some were from seminaries or for the girls' convents, and the only one I stopped at, and I had no idea why I stopped at this particular one, but it was the Franciscan Friars of the Atonement. And the priest talked to me very briefly, and they had a little card there, postcard, that you could fill out. And I filled it out right then. I was 12 years old. I filled it out, and I gave it back to him. He said, "You want to take that home and talk it over with your parents?" And I was like, "No." Yeah. And then maybe a week or two later, they called and they said the priest would like to come and talk to me and talk to my parents. And I said, okay. I mean, it didn't even occur to me to ask them, because there's no way that they would say, no, we don't want a priest in the house.
Right. They're required to accept a priest.
And they charged $30 a month. $30 a month for the education plus room and board.
Wow.
Which my father was really pissed off about.
Of course he was.
But his mother paid for it, so my grandmother took care of it, and off I went.
Wow.
And the other guys, pretty much the same thing. My friend Mike I was in the South Bronx. My friend Ollie was in the Bronx, but in a somewhat nicer neighborhood, but getting in a lot of trouble. And my friend Mike was from Lowell, and that was a really tough neighborhood.
Sure.
And he was in fights all the time and stealing things, and just not academic at all. And so we all escaped from home by going in the seminary. And Mike and I spent 4 years there and graduated. Richard almost completed the 3rd year, and then in a really strange way wound up leaving. And then Mike and I remained friends forever. And he was my best man, I was his best man, godfathers, and the whole thing.
Yep.
I probably live in New Hampshire, because I wanted to be closer to him. And Ollie, we didn't see or hear from him for years and years. And then around 2000 or so, Mike and I said, well, let's see if Father Owen, who was big in the book, is still alive. And we went to see him, and he told us about Richard, that Richard still kept in touch with him. So we got in touch with him. And we arranged to have a get-together, a reunion. And we rented a farm in the Finger Lakes, not too far from Watkins Glen. And then we went to the seminary. And we spent 2 or 3 days there. And the three of us just talked nonstop. I mean, the wives couldn't shut us up. My wife's getting pretty pissed off, as a matter of fact. And we found out things about ourselves. I mean, so even things about Mike that I didn't know. you start to reflect on that and think, well, how could we have spent all that time together and not known these things?
Mm-hmm.
And I think it has to do something with the narcissism of teenagers. I mean, you're your own universe, and everything else is just some sort of peripheral object.
Sure.
And the other thing is, teenage boys aren't going to say to other teenage boys, you know what really makes me sad? No. You know what my inner fears are? No. You're not going to do that.
No.
You know, why would you discuss that with the enemy?
Right.
And so one of the wives was fascinated. She said, I have never believed your stories about the seminary. I have always believed that you were molested and you just won't talk about it. You're hiding it. I never believed that it was an altogether good experience until we came here. And now I realized that it was like the best experience of your life. And it's like, yeah, that's what we've been saying. And so she said, you know, you guys ought to write a book. Ta-da.
Aha.
Ta-da.
Uh-huh.
And Mike already has 3 books published, educational books.
Uh-huh.
Well, 2 of them are educational books, and one of them actually is a book of interviews with kids around the world who have started small businesses and have done things for their communities. And the book is called Young Enough to Change the World. I'll throw that in there.
Sure, why not?
And it's just a really a nice book. And his point, something that has always eaten away at him, is when he hears people talking about how rotten kids are now, he says, you know, that's no more true now than it was when we were kids. You know, so here are a bunch of kids, and this is what they did. So he's already had his writing chops, and Ollie was an editor for Ep.8.
Oh.
And so when I agreed to write the book, my thought was, as with everything else that I write, it will sit in a drawer in my dresser, and maybe one of my great-great-grandsons will find it someday and say, well, he wasn't as boring as I thought. And but they're like, oh, no, we're going to get this published. We are? Yeah. So we did. But the seminary changed our lives completely. I mean, for the first time in my life, I really got interest and respect from an adult male.
Mm-hmm.
Nobody beating me up, nobody threatening me all the time. And encouragement, you know, to really try to be the very best at whatever you do that you can be. And that was just, it opened my eyes to a worldview that had not existed for me before that. You know, for one thing, to see that there are adult males who can get the kind of behavior that they want from teenage boys without screaming or hollering, calling them bad names, or smacking them in the head.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, there was just none of that stuff, none. And I also learned, you know, that unlike, we hear a lot of times now that you see some teenage boys doing something really bad, and somebody inevitably says, well, you know, that's just boys, and they all do. No, you can get what you want from them if you have pretty clear, invariable expectations.
Mm-hmm.
And that, you know, and if your expectations have teeth, it's like, if you do that again, you're gone. When they would say that to me, it's like, okay, I will never do that again. You know, I'm not leaving here.
Right.
There was a kid there who left the next day. He and I talked a little bit the first evening we were there, and he was telling me how uncomfortable he was and how much he missed home. And the next morning he was in the back of the chapel dressed in regular clothes and with his suitcases. And I said to somebody, why is he back there? He's leaving. Why is he leaving? Because he's homesick. Homesick? Are you kidding? I will never leave here. I will stay here forever.
So is the book reflections on your time there? Is it lessons from your time there? What's
the whole book is
crux
really
of it?
chronological. So
Okay.
The way that it's written, it'll have something of mine, something of Mike's, something of Ollie's.
Okay.
In our childhoods, the kind of adventures that we had, growing up in the kind of neighborhoods we did,
Okay.
which, you know, every kid, I mean, the kids in Belfast think that that's just the way that things were.
Sure.
You know,
Yeah.
it's like it.
Yeah.
But so I used to think my neighborhood was fairly normal, but, you know, it wasn't. And then we get to the seminary and it goes year by year. And interspersed will be what happened to me that year, what happened to Mike, what happened to Ollie that year.
Okay.
You know,
Okay.
So,
Nice. That sounds fascinating.
and the feedback I get is that most people don't have too much trouble with it. Occasionally people say, I wasn't sure who was speaking here. And it says John, but you know, but people.
That sounds pretty
But
self-explanatory.
they figured that out pretty quickly.
Right, right.
And then I think we each write rather differently from one another.
Okay,
So,
nice.
yeah.
Excellent. Okay. We have a segment on the show which is called The Five. And it's 5 standardized questions that we ask every author who comes on the show. Are you willing to answer the 5?
Okay.
Okay, good. I like the enthusiasm, John. Thank you. Question 1. If they published an author's yearbook today and you were in it, what would you be voted most likely to do?
Well, given my age, probably die.
Okay, good. Question number 2. Which 4 faces would appear on your author's Mount Rushmore?
Ha! Wow.
That's a good one, right?
It is a good one. Okay. I'm really partial to Graham Greene,
Okay.
John Steinbeck.
Uh-huh.
I really like Umberto Eco, although sometimes he's a little pretentious. Maybe Umberto Eco.
Okay. All right.
And a 4th. Barbara Kingsolver.
Barbara Kingsolver. Okay.
Yeah.
Nice.
like
Okay.
that.
That's a very handsome Mount Rushmore. Nice. And you know, Teddy Roosevelt was a little pretentious, so you can put him in the Teddy Roosevelt
Yeah, I
slot.
read a great book about him recently.
Oh yeah?
It's the book about his trips on that river in South America. I forget the name of the river now. After he was president.
Oh yes.
People died.
Yes.
I mean, he physically never recovered from this. One of his sons wound up killing himself because of the depression he went into on this trip.
That's right.
It was incredibly brutal. And I never realized what a smart guy Roosevelt was. I thought he was just a blustery loudmouth.
He can be both.
But he had really broad interests and a great memory, and he was a smart cookie.
Huh. Okay. All right. Then he belongs on Mount
He
Rushmore.
probably does.
Okay. Fair enough. We know a few presidents who don't. But anyway.
There is space for one. We
Then-
can just get him there now.
Question 3. What's something about you that almost nobody knows? Are you an open book? Does everybody know?
I am.
Okay.
If people ask me a question, I'll answer it.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, how about this one?
Yes. Because most people don't know anything about me.
Oh, okay.
In reality.
So it could be anything.
Sure. you have, when people ask the question of celebrities, of course,
Uh-huh.
what's the one thing that you want everyone to know about you?
Uh-huh.
I think nothing. Nothing. I don't want everybody to know anything about me. What? So, no.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. That's fair. That's a fair answer.
I truly am. You know, what you see is what you get.
Okay. Question 4. What is your favorite curse word, and in what phrase would you be most likely to use it?
Oh, God. Well, I know the context. It's driving.
Okay.
And, it probably is you stupid son of a bitch.
Stupid son of a bitch.
Stupid son of a bitch.
Okay. So son of a bitch is
one
the
of
curse.
One of my bicycle trips not too many years ago in Kansas, I think I probably came close to getting killed for that. But yeah.
For using the
And the
phrase
thing
stupid
is that
son of a
it
bitch.
comes out of me so automatically.
Uh-huh.
I wasn't even aware of having said it.
Ah. Well,
But he
see,
was aware of it.
now that could be the answer to question 3, something that people don't know about you, that the phrase stupid son of a bitch just flows out of you, and you're completely unaware of it.
There you go.
So we combine question 3 and question 4.
Excellent. That's very. See, I've learned something about
You
myself.
stupid sons of bitches. And question 5, if the world ended right after this video, what final message would you want to convey to your fans?
To my fans.
To your fans.
Okay. A couple of things. One is life is wonderful. Life is absolutely wonderful. It's a cornucopia of everything. It's everything good, it's everything bad. It's there to be selected. And, you know, I learned it when I was doing counseling with people that all of us lapse into these things sometimes where we say that life is a disappointment. But I think that rather we are a disappointment to life from time to time. Life is always endless possibility until you get so weak and sick you can't do anything, I suppose. And the other thing is, always think about the fish in the tanks. They always keep moving, because if they stop, the other fish will eat them. So motion is pretty important. Stay in movement all the time. Never wait to feel better to do something. Do something and you'll feel better. Yeah.
I can't think of any better way to wrap up than that. That is great advice. Well, everybody, the book is And Few Are Chosen. It's available on Amazon.com.
It is.
So get a hold of it and read all these wonderful stories. John Tuohey, thank you so much for joining me today.
Sure.
And we will see you next time. Cheers.
Thank you.